Hello there. You can count on me to find some of the most interesting, if not strangest brewers that exist online or on the internet. Now, the brewers we're gonna look at today aren't necessarily strange, but they are unique because the ones I have for us today are from the MoMA design store. Now, MoMA stands for Museum of Modern Art. It's a world-renowned museum that exists in New York, and attached to it, as I mentioned before, they have their design store. It's their gift shop, but it's also like a curated collection of items and pieces of art that are chosen both for their functionality and for their form. It's kind of like cream of the crop, if you will. Back in November, I had the opportunity to visit the MoMA. While I was there, I couldn't help notice that they had a lot of coffee equipment. So once I got home, I made the choice to purchase some of this coffee equipment because this is kind of heralded from the MoMA as being the top of the top, but that doesn't mean any of it was cheap. In fact, the two things I have today were significantly more expensive than they would usually be if you perhaps bought a different version or a different brand of both of these brewers. So I thought we should look at them today. I thought we should see if they live up to their price point and if they really are that perfect combination of both form and functionality. So let me go grab the two brewers we have to look at. Both of these are pretty recognizable. You have this one right over here, the Eva Solo. This is a type of pour over, and you have the Gemini Express. This is a Mocha Pot. The prices, however, might not be quite as familiar. This right here was just under $100. I believe it was $98 in total. And this over here was right around $50. Now, both of those price points, for the most part, are significantly higher than buying, let's say, like a V60 or something like that would be if you were getting a pour over, or if you were getting like a Bialetti Mocha Pot. Those would usually be like maybe $30. So these are significantly more. I think I want to start off with this Eva Solo right here, this pour over, because when we get to the Mocha Pot, as cute as it is, we will have to move over to the stovetop. So we will save this, which I think is gonna be the really fun one today, for the last. I'm gonna get started, I'm gonna go get some coffee ground, and in the meantime, I do wanna give a huge thank you to our sponsor for today's video.
I wanna give a huge thank you to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video. Contrary to what you may believe, I don't always like smelling like I just finished bathing in coffee. Scentbird is a fragrance subscription that allows you to shop over 600 different brands for just $16, with the flexibility to skip a month without penalties if you need to. Through their simple quiz, you'll be matched with fragrances from top indie labels and designer brands. Instead of having to spend large amounts of money on full-size bottles that you may not even like, Scentbird allows you to explore different fragrances with a 30-day supply before fully committing to that big bottle. The two favorite scents that I tried this month were Acqua di Parma, which was a lovely blend of citrus and sage, along with Gardenia, which was a rich combination of vanilla, fleur-de-lis, and black leather. So if you're interested in getting started with Scentbird, click the link below and use code MDC for 55% off your first month, meaning it's only $7 a month. Again, that is the link in the description, and use code MDC. And thank you again to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video.
Now this is an all-in-one scenario that we have going on. We have the base carafe included with this. We have a metal filter. That's something to note. Some people really like metal filters, some people don't. I don't have a strong reaction either way, so that's fine by me. We also have a pouring spout here. So the idea is you brew and then you pour directly into whatever receptacle you have. You also have a nice little cork plug right here, which will nicely seal everything together once you are done brewing. Okay, now we'll unbox it. Well, it's not very exciting inside. We have our cork top, we have our metal filter. These are always so, like, I guess one just sits it like that. And then we have this. Now, coming out of the box, I can't say that everything here looks the cleanest. Graham is behind the camera right now, so occasionally I'm looking past and this is pretty dirty. Why is it icky? For the price I spent, I wasn't expecting it to be icky, for lack of a better word. It's a little tricky to tell, but there are flecks of what looks like it might be coffee, kind of on the bottom here. What it looks like is that someone brewed into this and then didn't wash it with soapy water afterwards. So that's fun. And speaking of which, I'm going to go wash this with soapy water before we move any further into this. So when we received like our Rancilio, like our espresso machine, it's made very, very clear that you might find some water or some like remnants of stuff inside it, because before they ship you these types of machines at this price point, they will test them to make sure they work fully. So to find a little bit of water is to be expected, but you don't need to test the pour over before you send it to me. 5 minutes later, and I think we are all ready with significantly less ickiness than we had before. So as I mentioned before, we have this glass carafe. This is gonna be what we brew into. This has a capacity of 1 liter, so you can brew quite a bit of coffee into this. We also have a nice little spout. There is a cute little dip in the end of the spout. I doubt it will make a huge difference, but it's a nice little touch. Something I will mention is that besides the branding of the people who designed this pour over, there's no necessarily markings about capacity in here. So you brew into it and you have whatever visual amount of coffee that you have left. There's nothing indicating what amount you have brewed into here. The other thing I will note is that this is not double walled, which yes, while it makes it very sleek looking, that means heat is going to come off this pretty quickly. It also means that you're not able to really touch any of the glass surface besides the handle here, because this will heat up very, very quickly. I don't have much to say about the filter. The fineness of it looks all right. I think this should work just fine. We should just brew with it, see how it goes, see how the experience is. Any of my ickiness complaints, I think I'm gonna direct at MoMA. I don't necessarily fault the manufacturer of this. I'm questioning, like I'm curious if this was perhaps like a display model that they perhaps took off the shelf and repacked, because inside our box here, there was absolutely no like packing material. This is what I got. This was just set inside everything here, which feels very, very sketchy for really fine glasswork that's not double walled like this. Anyways, all of that aside, I need a scale and I need some coffee. I don't really fancy brewing a full liter of coffee in this moment, so we're just gonna brew a good amount. As you can see, 216, and my allowance for coffee has already finished for the day. But anyways, here goes nothing. Let the first bloom kind of occur here. I think this cork top here is gonna be mostly used just to make sure coffee doesn't spill out at the top when you're pouring, because this is not gonna really seal in any heat. And additionally, you are always gonna have this open spout right here where heat is gonna be lost at. So this is gonna be one of those situations where you need to drink your coffee very quickly. This is a pretty fine metal filter as far as metal filters go. So perhaps if I was to brew with this again, I might use a grind size that is slightly coarser than what I would usually use with a metal filter. We're not judging this on necessarily the quality of coffee that it makes, because this is a metal filter pour over. It is pretty standard. However, I want to mostly look at the functionality of this entire machine. So, but just a note, if you were to get something like this, maybe go a little bit coarser than you would otherwise. And now we wait. The worst part of a pour over is just waiting for it to very, very slowly drip down into your main carafe. This would be a good time, however, to mention that I was recently on a very cool podcast. Trevor over at Mythical Kitchen and with Mythical Entertainment, he has a podcast. It's called Trevor Talks Too Much. It is super fun. The two of us talked about a lot of things. We talked about Star Wars, in which I have some very controversial opinions. We talked about books. We talked about everything. And so if you would like to go listen to it, I will be linking it down in one of the top links in the description down below. I'm trying to imagine the absolute absurdity of like brewing this all the way to the top. Like brewing 1 liter of coffee as a pour over. That's a lot of coffee. It is pretty though. I will give it that. This is pleasant to look at. I think this is objectively more pleasant to look at than if you were brewing into, let's say, like an opaque mug, which is what I would be doing otherwise. Okay, that is my final draw through. So we will let this all sit. We'll let this brew drip down, and then we get to cap it. We get to pour this into another mug. Really, all coffee is moving from one carafe to another carafe. I thought it would be nice to kind of have a matching receptacle. This is a lost sentence. I thought it would be nice to use fancy glass with a fancy pour over. So I have my Crew tasting glass here. I think it kind of matches. The colors of glass are slightly different, so that's kind of unfortunate. Okay, we have reached the end of our pour over. The tricky thing always is now like rushing this to wherever I'm gonna dump it. I'm gonna set this in the sink for the time being while we just finish everything up before I clean it. So it's always just kind of like a mad dash. I felt so good about it too. I put it down and I was like, I've done a great job here. I've done such a good job. Guys, I have the most competition brain right now, so let's blame it on that. So as suspected, the entire body of this is pretty warm. You don't really want to be touching this. Like you can touch it a little bit, but don't like be handling it. Pop our little cork in. This is cute. This looks really nice. Like I am imagining you have like friends over, it's afternoon tea, or perhaps it's brunch, and you have carried this out on a tray. That would be quite lovely to see this. This is very aesthetic, for lack of a better word. It's a very pleasant pouring experience. I'm glad to see there is no drip down the edge. That worked out very nicely. I don't need any more dripping today. I've done enough on my own. Now we have a cup of coffee. And it tastes fine. Let's look at our pros and cons here again real fast, because the question we are trying to answer here today is this worth $98? Close to $100, which is very expensive for a pour over. To be frank, that is quite expensive for something of this kind of minimal of setup. The things I like about it, I like that it has a pour spout. I like that, unlike things that have happened with the Chemex, there is no real like drawback where you get kind of drips falling down the side. Like this was very nicely contained. It's very clean. I like how it looks. I think it's very cute. I think it has kind of like a farmhouse vibe that's really nice. Those are the good things I have to say about it. Now, the bad things I have to say about it is that it is made of glass and it is not insulated. This is a single layer of glass, so that means you lose heat very quickly. You need to serve your coffee very, very quickly, and even though you have this little cap here, that's more to just make sure you don't spill rather than to insulate it in any way. The second thing I don't really like about it is that it came to me very dirty, but that perhaps is MoMA's problem and not the people who made it. I also don't really love that it's not super easy to clean. I say this having had to clean it before I used it. Reaching in here is not the easiest thing to do. This is kind of a tricky scenario, but if you wanted to risk it, I suppose you could put this in the dishwasher because it's just a single walled glass carafe. I might advise against that because if you do put it in the dishwasher and it clanks against something, because of how thin this is, I think you have a pretty high chance of it breaking. So I would probably suggest you stick to hand washing, and in that way, it's a little bit trickier to clean than your average carafe. The question remains though, is it worth $98? I'm gonna personally say no on this one. I don't think this is necessarily worth $98, and I think there are some other things that you could get for that amount that would work a lot better. I think getting yourself perhaps a double-walled carafe, like a simple one, and getting maybe like a V60 or a Kalita or something, and then brewing that way with like a paper filter, I think that would be probably my recommended solution, and that sort of solution will run you probably like $50 or less. That being said, it's very cute, and I'm glad we had a chance to try it. Now, I'm excited for our next brewer because it is even cuter, and I am even more excited to try it. I think most of us are probably familiar with this. This is a Mocha Pot, and currently ongoing on his channel, James Hoffman is actually doing a full series about Mocha Pots. It's very, very fun. It's very educational, so I highly recommend if you are someone who is brewing with one that you go check that out. So it's a lot more like brew-centric. But that being said, this is a slightly more unconventional Mocha Pot you will standardly see. This is kind of a cheap thing that I have lying around that I was gifted at one point, but this is more of your standard shape of Mocha Pot. You set this on your stove and you have a singular spout that you're going to pour out of once the coffee has risen up and brewed into the top chamber. This, however, a little bit different. Now, I mentioned before, this was $50. The nice thing about this though is that it doesn't just come with the brewer. You get some fun things on the side, namely some saucers and some cups. This right here is the Gemini Express that we have purchased, and as you can see, there's a slight difference in the format here. Whereas here you don't need a cup, you just brew and then pour into whatever you're using. This, you actually brew directly into your cup. So you have two different little spouts. Underneath you have little spouts. So in the same way, the coffee is going to rise up through here, but instead of gathering, you're gonna either place and do a singular cup if you wanna do like a double of whatever you're doing, or if you're sharing it with a loved one or a friend or an enemy, I suppose you could share this with your enemy. You can have two cups and you can brew into these two little cups and then have your lovely little tea saucers and you're ready to go. Now, already, I would argue this does live up to the price point. Like having all these items together does make it worth $50, but we haven't tried it yet. Maybe it doesn't work as well as I think it's gonna work. So let's get started. Off the bat, just by handling this a little bit, it feels very nice. This has some substance to it. This is some sort of like powder coated metal. None of this, there is no plastic component to this. This is a nice, durable, high quality. It kind of has to. This is gonna heat up quite a bit. Now inside, the rest of the build is fairly similar to what you'd find in a standard Mocha Pot. Inside on our normal Mocha Pot, if you will, you have a little chamber for your coffee, you have a chamber for your water. You put this all together and you're good to go, off to the races. The only thing I will note about this one is it does have like a second little filter that's gonna sit on top of your coffee. You're not gonna tamp your coffee, but you are gonna kind of seal it in by placing this on top. So again, you have your water chamber, you have your chamber where your coffee goes, you seat this little extra filter on top, and then you just screw everything back together and you operate as usual. So first things first, we need some water. My goal here today isn't to give you any sort of brew recipe. That is completely up to you you and your tastes. However, a couple guidelines when using a Mocha Pot is you don't want to fill your water chamber up over this little valve right here. So just keep that in mind if you are using one for the first time. I have also chosen to preheat my water. This tends to make the process go slightly quicker than using cold water, but if you want to use cold water too, you can totally do that. Now the tricky part with Mocha Pots is always like filling the coffee chamber before placing it back in, because you have this little spout at the bottom which makes it not stand upable. Okay, our coffee is inside. Drop this in here, drop that. Just nice and flat on top. Screw it all together. Be very careful at this point if you've done what I have done and put preheated water in your water chamber. This will be very warm right now, so just be careful. Okay, so one thing I will mention here that I did just notice is that, again, because I have preheated my water, this chamber down here, very warm. Don't want to touch it. Hot metal. This doesn't necessarily have a distinct handle. On our normal Mocha Pot, you do have a handle here. You just grab, makes a lot of sense. It's a handle, we know how to use those. This, I imagine, you could lift like this, go side mode on it, or you could do what my inclination is to do and just kind of like, just grab it and just go. Use your best judgment on how you want to carry this, if you have one along and are following along. Regardless of how you want to carry it, we need to go to the stove top now. So, cameraman extraordinaire, let's go this way. Hi everyone, we made it over to the stovetop angle. Now, I have placed these underneath. I have split the spout, so we're gonna do our best to brew into both of these cups right now. Now, if you've brewed with a Mocha Pot, you know that sometimes it can be a little bit dramatic because you do need to keep your eye on it. Once it starts brewing, once that coffee starts pouring out of the top, you want to be very careful to pretty quickly remove it from heat because it will just kind of keep going until all of your water has either evaporated or brewed. And if you're not careful, that can lead to overflowing or burnt flavors or any of that bad stuff that we are not looking for here today. So this process will go pretty quickly as long as nothing goes terribly wrong. So I'm gonna turn on my heat to like a medium high. We're gonna get that water to reach a brewing temperature, and then ideally we will have some coffee pouring into these 2 cups very, very quickly. And then after that, I will meet you back at the table, at the countertop, and we will drink our coffee and evaluate whether this is a good brewer for $50. I keep questioning whether I have like correctly split these. Hi everyone, popping in here real fast to say at this point with your brew, you should probably grab a hot pad of some sort when using this brewer because as we mentioned before, there is no handle on this. So wow, the burner's on right now and it's very hot on my face. Don't do as I do as I say. You will not want to necessarily grab any of the components of this, so get yourself a hot pad. You'll be good to go. We've had mild success, so let's go back to the countertop and let's talk about what just happened. Very scary. On the bright side, we have 2 lovely unspilled little cups of coffee right here. You might have seen a little bit of the struggle that just happened over there. What happened was I came at this to remove it off the heat once the coffee had started brewing, and it was very hard to get a grip on. I went personally for the mode of grabbing the top, again with my hot pad, because yes, as I thought before, all of this surface has heated up, including kind of the wings, if you will, underneath here. These were very hot as well. So came at it from the top, and grabbing it was a little bit of a struggle, but we made it work at the end. And today we have 2 lovely little cups of coffees. Now, I love that they came with a saucer. I think saucers are just the most wonderful thing on earth. If you serve me any sort of tiny drink with a saucer, I will probably love you forever and or come back to your coffee shop frequently. Coffee-wise, tastes nice. It tastes like coffee that came from a Mocha Pot. It is nothing extraordinary, but the magic of this is not necessarily in the coffee it produces. It's more of the experience of using it. And I think the experience overall was very, very nice. My only overall complaint with this is that perhaps it would have been nice if they'd been able to incorporate some sort of handle. I'd like to think like a handle along the back here, just something to really be able to grab onto would have been pretty nice and made this entire process a little bit easier. But beyond that, I think this Gemini Express is great. Now, the question we're asking today is this worth the price tag that comes with it? This is again, $50. This is a good 10 to 15 to even maybe 20 more than you would averagely spend on a Mocha Pot. And in this case, with all the bits and bobs that come with it, I do think this is completely worth the price. This works perfectly well as a Mocha Pot. I do wish it had a handle, but beyond that, I think this is lovely. So yes, if you are looking for a Mocha Pot that is slightly cuter, maybe this is a good option for you. I am sad to say that I don't feel the exact same way about this little pour over brewer over here. I think there are better options for the cost of what you would spend on this. But that being said, it is also very pretty. So if you are someone who has expendable income and goes for aesthetics, this could could be the right thing still for you. I think there is a market for it. That market is just not necessarily me, and it might not be you based on what I talked about today. But anyways, this was a lot of fun. There are many other coffee things that MoMA sells that I would like to get my hands on. I will tell you, I have seen some absolutely absurd looking kettles that MoMA has that I'm very excited for. They have like a cube kettle. It's as absurd as it sounds just saying it out loud, and I'm very excited for that. But so I think today we have found something that is very nice. And I also think we have found something that is okay, and I'm happy with it. I think we have ended on a nice high note for today, and I'm very satisfied with that. Now, before we close out the video, I do want to give another huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Scentbird. If you would like to check out any of their fragrances or any ways to get started or discount codes, feel free to click the top link down in the description. That being said, I am Morgan Drinks Coffee. You can find me pretty much everywhere online at Morgan Drinks Coffee. I am here once a week, plus some shorts. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram almost every single day. And you can also find me on Trevor's new podcast, which will also be linked in the description down below. It is Trevor Talks Too Much. Trevor is the best. I love him, and I hope you all get to go enjoy that chaotic video as well. Now, I'm gonna go enjoy the rest of one of my little coffees I have brewed here. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.